je m'appelle TF. Bienvenue à Les Belles et la Bête. Welcome to Beauties and Beasts, a podcast of all things Beauty and the Beast. And this is the second to last episode. I know, but I think this series has run its course. And now that the series is coming to an end, it's probably about time I cover Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, or in its original title, Notre Dame de Paris. The historical novel, published in 1833, set in 1492 Paris, about a deformed bell ringer shunned for his ugliness, who becomes a hero in rescuing a beautiful gypsy. Okay, quick disclaimer. I know there's controversy these days on using the term gypsy to refer to the European ethnic group, as it stems from Egyptian, which the Roma or Romani were presumed to be from, when in actuality they are descended from the Punjab region of northern India, not Egypt. They are Eurasian, not African. And these days, gypsy is considered a derogatory term, although some of the Roma embrace it. When I was living in Romania, it was definitely used as an insult by my white Romanian classmates. So please note that when I use the term gypsy, it is in the historical context of the novel and the movies, even though Victor Hugo makes the same mistake of referring to the Romani as Egyptian. They didn't exactly care about political correctness in the 19th century. Now, The Hunchback of Notre Dame has received many film adaptations, the most famous being the 1923 silent film with Lon Chaney and the 1996 animated film from Disney, later adapted into a stage musical. I tried listening to the audiobook of the original novel, but damn was it hard to get through. It takes 6 chapters before we get to our actual characters. So yeah, I won't go through the full book, but I will summarize it before going into the Disney version, so you get the context of the novel. But first, I would like to thank my $5 plus patrons, Arvin Joshua Rocks 15, BellaPinkSavage, Cosmic Trail, nalaxsimba, and TyrannosaurusVenom, and returning patron Dead as a Doe. Sorry you came back towards the end of the series, I guess you didn't get the memo. Starting in July, my creative projects will be funded on Patreon. So if you wish to continue your patronage, go there in July. Just go to patreon.com/DisneyFanatic2364. And with the patronships, I will start taking commissions for animated music videos on YouTube, as well as early access to my webcomic and videos. You can also share your support by buying merchandise on Redbubble. Just go to DisneyFanatic23.redbubble.com. It is still Pride Month. Go get your Pride merch. As I said, The Hunchback of Notre Dame takes place during the 1482 Festival of Fools, or January 6th, 12th night, in Paris, when the people revel in dressing as their opposites, men as women, servants as masters, etc. And Quasimodo, the hunchback bell ringer of Notre Dame, the cathedral, half-blind and deaf from the ringing of the bells, is elected Pope of Fools for being the ugliest person in Paris, and he's paraded around. Meanwhile, a beautiful Roma girl named La Esmeralda is performing in the streets with her tambourine and her trained goat, Jolly. Yeah, that's right, the goat sidekick was no invention of Disney, it was actually in the original book. Men are entranced by her, including Pierre Gringoire, the poet, and the archdeacon Claude Frollo, a self-righteous man who disapproves of this holiday and is the caretaker of Quasimodo. But Esmeralda is also called a witch and a heathen by people like Sister Gudule, who blames the Roma for the kidnapping of her daughter 15 years ago. The poet Gringoire follows Esmeralda home, only for her to be attacked by Frollo and Quasimodo. See, Frollo convinced the hunchback to help kidnap her. Gringoire, trying to help, is knocked out, and Frollo runs away as the captain of the guard, Phoebus de Châteaupers, and his men arrive to save Esmeralda and arrest Quasimodo. And Quasimodo, having so much trouble communicating, can't really explain what happened. Gringoire still follows Esmeralda to the Court of Miracles, a haven for beggars and thieves where the blind see and the lame walk. Because they pretend to be blind or lame. Okay, Let me just clarify. There are Roma currently in the world who, out of desperation resulting from persecution and poverty, will turn to a life of crime and fake blindness and the like. I once came across a Roma girl around 13 in Sigishwara looking very pregnant, begging for money, and she and her little sister or something ended up following me and my classmates for a while. I'm not even sure if she was actually pregnant, and if she was, then that is terrifying. Please know that this does not reflect the lives of all Roma people, and if they can't get honest work, it is usually because no one will let them. Maybe if people weren't so racist, these people wouldn't have to beg in the streets. Anyway, because Gringoire is an outsider, the Roma decide to hang him. But Esmeralda stops them, agreeing to marry Gringoire for 4 years. And I don't really get why, I guess to make him technically one of them? I don't know. The next day, Quasimodo is put on trial for attempted kidnapping, is tortured, and lynched in the square. He begs for water, and Esmeralda, taking pity on him, brings some to him, and because of this kindness, Quasimodo falls in love with her. Time goes by, and Esmeralda is courted by Phoebus, even though he's engaged to a noblewoman. Frollo sees the couple and grows jealous, and in renouncing God and turning to black magic, he plans to win Esmeralda all for himself. Even though he's an archdeacon, a priest, and should not be engaging in lustful affairs. Oh, but they did it anyway. Who am I kidding? And I could say that as someone who grew up in the Roman Catholic Church. When Phoebus goes to meet Esmeralda, Frollo stabs him, and Esmeralda is framed for the crime. Yep, they're quick to blame the Roma girl. Through torture, she is forced to confess and sentenced to death. As she is humiliated in Notre Dame Square, she sees Phoebus, who survived the stabbing, and calls out to him. But since he doesn't want people to know that he was injured, by a girl nonetheless, he ignores her and goes into the house of his fiancée. Gee, thanks for nothing, buddy. Quasimodo, seeing Esmeralda in trouble, swings down from the Notre Dame, carries her back inside, and cries out, "Sanctuary!" making her safe from the law as long as she remains inside the cathedral. Although at first Esmeralda is put off by Quasimodo's appearance, they start to become friends. And then the Roma make a plan to rescue Esmeralda, as Parliament has overturned the sanctuary law and they are going to arrest Esmeralda again. Quasimodo, seeing the mob, thinks they're here to kill Esmeralda. He fights back, while Frollo sneaks Esmeralda away and offers to save her if she'll love him, but she'd rather die. So while he goes to alert the guards, Frollo leaves Esme with Sister Gudule, and they discover that Esmeralda was her kidnapped daughter from 15 years ago. Hey, wait a minute, so she's not really Roma? Geez, so much for representing the Romani as something other than ruthless vagabonds. Thanks for that, Victor Hugo. Turns out she's just a white girl. The guards separate Esmeralda and her mother, killing the mother and taking Esmeralda to the gallows, where she is hanged. Frollo laughs in triumph, and in anger, Quasimodo throws him from the cathedral, cries to Esmeralda's corpse, "There is everything I ever loved," and then he is never seen again. Though in the epilogue, his body is discovered in the mass grave of those executed, the skeleton of the hunchback holding the remains of Esmeralda. And when the guards attempt to pull them apart, his skeleton crumbles to dust. Jeez almighty, what kind of story is this? Our heroes die? Dashing Phoebus marries another woman? Esmeralda is not really Roma? My god, you see why I prefer the Disney version over the book? Sorry for a second. I sneezed too much and need to blow my nose. The 1923 silent film pretty much follows most of the original plot, but instead of the Archdeacon Claude Frollo being the villain, it's his layman brother, Jehan Frollo. And the Archdeacon actually helps Quasimodo. I guess they didn't want to show a priest as the bad guy. Bogus. Hey, I can say as a person raised in the Catholic Church, corruption in our church is real, especially in medieval times, which I believe Hugo was trying to portray in his book. Also in the silent film, Esmeralda and Phoebus end up together. He chooses her over the noblewoman, while Quasimodo is stabbed by Jahan as he's tossing him off the cathedral. Why do they gotta do my hunchback dirty like that? I mean, sure, you give Esmeralda a happy ending, but while she is whispering sweet nothings with her Prince Charming, poor Quasimodo's dying. Like, come on, that's like worse. But I know most of you are probably more familiar with the 1996 Disney version, which in terms of endings is a hell of a lot more satisfying and helps that it's a banger musical. Oh gosh, I didn't do a spoiler alert at the beginning, did I? Spoilers! Unlike the book, Disney gives our hunchback a backstory. No pun intended. How Judge Claude Frollo killed his Roma mother when he was a baby. He was chasing her thinking that she had stolen goods, not realizing it was a baby, and killed her by kicking her to the ground and her head hit the pavement, in a similar way that Esmeralda's mother died in the book. I'm going to assume the father was white, or there was some white recessive gene in there. It's possible. Also, yes, Frollo is a judge in the Disney movie rather than the archdeacon. I assume to give him more legal authority as a villain who wants to purge the world of vice and sin, but he cannot see his own faults. And I know the church had a lot of power, but I don't think he would have been able to oversee executions like this. Upon seeing that the Roma woman's baby is deformed, Frollo is about to drown him in the well, when the archdeacon, voiced by David Ogden Stiers, may rest in peace, also rest in peace Tony J, stops him and says that God will punish him for spilling innocent blood on the steps of Notre Dame. To reconcile for his sins, he must take care of the child and raise him as his own. Frollo agrees on the condition that he live with the archdeacon in the bell tower, and he gives the child a cruel name, meaning half-formed in French, Quasimodo. 20 years pass, and it's the Feast of Fools. Yeah, here we are, back to where the book began. And Quasimodo wants to join in on the fun, because he's just been locked in his tower his entire life. And apparently he isn't deaf. Hold on, does Disney seriously engage in disabled erasure? You had your chance to have a deaf protagonist that deaf kids could look up to, and you blew it? Okay, that aside, despite his deformities, Quasimodo turned out a sweetheart with only gargoyles for friends. Never really clear if the gargoyles are alive or just in his head. Guess it's up to interpretation. And his master Frollo has led him to believe that his mother abandoned him as a child, and that Frollo protects him from the cruelty of the outside world by keeping him in the cathedral. Gaslighting at its finest. Meanwhile, Captain Phoebus returns to Paris from battle and comes across a lovely young Roma girl, Esmeralda, here we go again, who thankfully is Roma in this movie and has dark skin, and there's no kidnapped from white family bullcrap going on here. When she's harassed by soldiers for earning honest money, he subtly helps her to get away. Phoebus meets with Frollo, who summoned him to help with the gypsy problem, and Phoebus is like, I was summoned from the wars to fight fortune tellers and palm readers? Not an unfair assumption, actually. Quite a few self-proclaimed witches are in Romania, a lot of them of Roma descent, but it's witchcraft along the lines of fortune-telling and charm-making. Nowadays considered legitimate enough for an income tax. But Frollo sees this all as heathen, and he intends to find their hideout, the Court of Miracles, and squash them all, with Phoebus' help. The captain and the judge proceed to the festival, and Quasimodo, after being persuaded by his 3 gargoyle friends, attends the festival in disguise. He accidentally falls into Esmeralda's dressing tent, and she helps him up to see if he's hurt, going, see, no harm done. By the way, great mask. First time someone's kind to him, even after seeing his face. Okay, but she still thinks it's a mask. Esmeralda goes on stage with her fancy dancing, immediately entrancing Quasimodo, Phoebus, and Frollo. That much hasn't changed, just been reduced to 3 admirers instead of 4. And then they crown the King of Fools, based on who can make the ugliest face. Esmeralda drags Quasimodo on stage and yanks off his mask, only to learn that it's his face. But our Roma MC Clopin is like, don't panic. We wanted the ugliest face in Perry, and here he is! So Quasimodo is crowned and paraded, and he feels on top of the world until soldiers start throwing things at him. Mob mentality ensues, and he's tied down and lynched for no reason. Hey, at least in the book it was for attempted kidnapping, which he did technically do, though he was coerced. Frollo refuses to help Quasimodo, but Esmeralda, seeing this injustice, walks up to him, silencing the crowd, and washes his face. Frollo orders her down, but Esmeralda defies him and frees Quasimodo. Yes, Bella, I agree. This part is always hard to watch. She cries, "You mistreat this poor boy the same way you mistreat my people. You speak of justice, but you are cruel to those most in need of your help." Frollo orders her arrest, but thanks to the help of stage magic and acrobatics, Esmeralda escapes. Yeah, not the helpless damsel in distress as portrayed in the book or the silent movie. She's got the skills to fight back. Even Phoebus is like, "What a woman!" Yeah, ain't just a pretty face. Quasimodo, however, is given a look of disapproval from Frollo, and he vows never to disobey him again, and returns to the Notre Dame, his sanctuary. Phoebus later sees Esmeralda slip into the cathedral, and he follows her. Thinking he's here to arrest her, they engage in combat, until Phoebus insists he cannot arrest her as long as she's in the church, and he merely wishes to know her name. Then Frollo barges in, and Phoebus lies, saying that Esmeralda claims sanctuary and they can't do anything. The archdeacon intervenes, reminding Frollo to respect the sanctity of the church. As the soldiers leave, Frollo stays behind and warns Esmeralda that he's a patient man and gypsies don't do well inside stone walls. All while smelling her hair. Creep! Thank you, Bella. You took the words right out of my mouth. Creep. So, Esmeralda is safe, but still trapped, because if she leaves the cathedral, she'll be arrested. And she vents to the archdeacon on how unfairly people who are different are treated. The archdeacon's like, "You can't right all the world's wrongs by yourself, you know." Well, no one out there is going to help, that's for sure. Well, maybe there's someone in here who can. So Esmeralda prays to the Lord to help the outcasts in a beautiful ballad, while Quasimodo watches and is falling more and more in love with her. And when Quasimodo's shunned by the churchgoers, Esmeralda follows him to the bell tower, apologizing for bringing him up on stage. And then she sees all his craft work and his model of the town, commending him for his talent. Excited to have some company, Quasimodo shows her the bells and then the view from the roof. And she's like, "I could stay up here forever." You could, you know. You have sanctuary. But not freedom. Gypsies don't do well inside stone walls. But Quasimodo's like, "Well, you're not like other gypsies. They're evil. My master Frollo told me so." Esmeralda can't believe someone so cruel could raise someone so good as Quasi. But he insists that Frollo saved his life when no one else would, because of the monster that he is. Esmeralda takes his palm, reading the lines, and says, "That's funny. I don't see any monster lines. And now look at me. Do you think I'm evil? Oh no, you're good and kind and a gypsy. And maybe Frollo is wrong about the both of us." Yeah, the Middle Ages were not a good time for anyone who was different. In fact, about any time was not a good time for people who were different. Quasimodo, to return the favor for her saving him earlier, helps her escape the cathedral by climbing down. She asks him to come away with her to the Court of Miracles, but after today he's scared to leave. So she promises to see him again, kissing his cheek, and gives him a necklace saying he can use it if he ever needs a sanctuary. When you wear this woven band, you hold the city in your hand. Quasimodo returns to the cathedral and runs into Phoebus. At first they fight, until Phoebus says, "I didn't mean to trap Esmeralda here. It was the only way I can save her life." Will you tell her that? Quasimodo agrees and lets him go. The gargoyles declare that Esmeralda is in love with Quasi, but because of his face he worries that it'll never work. Nevertheless, he carves a wooden figure of her, saying that he's seen heaven's light. Meanwhile, Frollo sees hellfire as he lusts for Esmeralda during the most fire Disney villain song ever. In hearing Esmeralda's escape, he goes on a rampage, smoking out other Roma and demanding they give in information on Esmeralda. When he asks Phoebus to burn down the miller's home, with the family still in it, suspecting them of hoarding Roma, Phoebus refuses, while Esmeralda watches from afar. Frollo burns the mill anyway, and Phoebus rescues the family. But now, for his insubordination, he is sentenced to immediate death. Thanks to Esmeralda, Phoebus gets away, but is shot with an arrow and falls into the river. Esmeralda dives in and rescues him, while Frollo sets Paris aflame in his obsessive search. All this for one girl. Get your priorities straight, man. Back at the bell tower, Quasimodo worries for Esmeralda, while the gargoyles sing that she's gonna come back because she likes him. Esmeralda does return with a wounded Phoebus, asking Quasimodo to hide him. As Esmeralda tends to Phoebus's wounds, however, they end up kissing, while Quasimodo is right there. Damn it, Disney, this has got to be the only time you made us feel heartbroken over a kiss. Then Frollo returns, and while Esmeralda slips out, Quasimodo hides Phoebus. Frollo, seeing the figurine of Esmeralda, finds out that Quasimodo let her escape, and now all of Paris is burning because of him! That she tricked him, that gypsies are not capable of real love. Think, boy, think of your mother! Liar, liar, pants on fire. Ooh, poor choice of words on my part. Frollo then reveals that he knows where the Court of Miracles is, and that he will attack at dawn with 1,000 men. Once he's gone, Phoebus insists they go to the Court of Miracles to warn Esmeralda, but Quasimodo's still bitter about being rejected, and so Phoebus goes alone. And Quasimodo's like, why should I act like the hero when she already has her knight in shining armor, and it's not me? But because he's too good a person and still cares for Esmeralda, he joins Phoebus, and they use the map on Esmeralda's necklace to find the Court of Miracles in the old catacombs. But they are ambushed by the Roma, who mistake them for spies of Frollo, and are about to hang them when Esmeralda intervenes. Phoebus warns them of Frollo, only for him to show up right then and there, as he followed Quasimodo. It was all a ruse, you see. Phoebus and the Roma are carted off to Notre Dame Square, while Quasimodo is chained up in the bell tower, and Esmeralda is about to be burned as a witch. Oh my gosh, sorry, did you just hear my stomach growling? I'm afraid I'm having digestive issues right now. Let's leave it at that. I did not realize how loud that was. Okay, historical note, they hanged witches and burned heretics. There's a difference. Like, what, you can't show a hanging in a Disney movie? But you did that in Tarzan, technically. I guess it would have been harder for Quasimodo to save her from that. I don't know. Anyway, Frollo whispers to Esmeralda that he can still save her if she agrees to be with him, but she spits in his face. Yeah, girl, I'd choose death too. Up in the tower, the gargoyles demand that Quasimodo save Esmeralda, and that the chains are not what's holding him back. But he gives up and tells them to leave him alone. And they're like, okay, buddy, we'll leave you alone. After all, we're just made of stone. We just thought you were made of something stronger. You're right, Bella. Maybe they thought this film was scary enough. Then, as the fire is lit, Quasimodo finds his strength, breaks free of his chains, swings down from Notre Dame, rescues Esmeralda in such an epic scene, and she's passed out from the smoke. He takes her back to the bell tower and claims sanctuary! Frollo orders the guards to break into Notre Dame, while Phoebus escapes and rallies the people to fight back against Frollo. And Quasimodo and the gargoyles fight from above. But Frollo slips in, ignores the archdeacon's protests, and goes into the bell tower. Just as the battle takes a turn in the hero's favor, Quasimodo goes to celebrate with Esmeralda, but she's unresponsive. He cradles her and cries as Frollo approaches with a knife. Just as he's about to stab Quasimodo, he fights back, saying, "All my life you told me that the world was a dark, cruel place. But now I see the only thing dark and cruel about it is people like you. You tell him, Quasi." Then Esmeralda wakes. Thank God! And Frollo charges at them with a sword, chasing them all around the balcony. Frollo corners Quasimodo, saying, "Should have known you tried to save that gypsy witch, just as your own mother died trying to save you. Now I'll do what I should have done 20 years ago!" He tries to throw Quasimodo off the balcony, only for him to be dragged down with him. Esmeralda catches Quasimodo. Frollo stands on a ledge, is about to strike at Esmeralda when it crumbles beneath him, and he falls into the fiery pit below. Now that is justice right there. Quasimodo slips from Esmeralda's grasp, but Phoebus catches him. Gosh, the anxiety in this scene. The trio reunites, and Quasimodo puts Esmeralda's hand in Phoebus's. He's all right with them being together. Esmeralda takes Quasimodo outside the cathedral, and he is regarded as a hero by the people. Now here is a riddle to guess if you can. What makes a monster and what makes a man? Yes, Victor Hugo, this is the ending we needed. Of course, the stage adaptation combined the Disney movie and the novel, so the ending of that is just as tragic, but come on, you can't have a sad ending in a G-rated animated film. Oh wait, this was rated G? How'd they get away with that? I will acknowledge the book was a social commentary on the Roman Catholic rule in the Middle Ages and the oppressive nature of so-called justice from the people in power, when those who are different are persecuted and those in power get away with hypocrisy. Hugo was trying to portray the reality of the time, though his portrayal of the Roma could have been better. Why did Esmeralda have to be a kidnapped white girl? Come on! Disney, meanwhile, wanted a more hopeful ending, that people who are different can find a place in this world. And they put more focus on the Hunchback than the book does, even though they erase the fact that he was deaf. I'll forgive them for this, because this movie still makes me ugly cry. And I still think it's done better than the 1923 silent film, in terms of making me feel for the characters. But we still got two unconventional main characters. A man born deformed, rather than being under a spell, and he has a gentle soul. And a woman who is beautiful, but is an outcast for her race. Of course, as is the case with many women of color who, historically, were placed in the lower class, she is considered an outcast but is still coveted by men, specifically white men. Even Phoebus in the book is a ladies' man who is engaged to someone else, and Esmeralda's kind of his side piece. Of course, Disney makes Phoebus a lot better, portraying him as a man of the law, doing his job, but when he sees that the law is unjust, he renounces his position and stands up for what is right. And that honor is what attracts Esmeralda to him, not just a pretty face like in the book. Seriously, why? Esmeralda's just a girl who falls for a pretty face in the book. In turn, Phoebus sees her as she is in the Disney movie, a tough, beautiful girl who can't catch a break. The world is just unfair to her. And then there's Frollo. Priest or judge, he's still a corrupt, hypocritical soul who doesn't practice what he preaches. The worst part is, he reflects the real villains in society. No magic powers, but a human being who can't see his own vices, and he takes that out on others. And his attraction to Esmeralda can only be described as a lustful obsession for her as an object to possess, not as a person to love and cherish. Quasimodo falls for Esmeralda because of her kindness, not just because she's beautiful. After all, no one's ever been kind to him, and Frollo pretends to be kind, but still calls him a monster and ugly. Well, her kindness is genuine, and she sees him as a person rather than as a monster. However, unlike most Beauty and the Beast romances, this does not end in the Beast getting the beauty, whether you're reading the book or watching the movie. Although they become friends, Esmeralda's feelings are not romantic. While Quasimodo is initially heartbroken in the Disney movie that she chooses Phoebus over him, he decides, unlike Frollo, to put her happiness over his own. and in the end accepts that Esmeralda loves someone else, and they stay friends. And hey, at least Disney's Phoebus is a good guy. In the book, the dude doesn't even stand up for his girl when she's falsely accused of stabbing him. What a wimp. Sometimes you don't need a romantic partner to find a happy ending. All Quasimodo needed was to be accepted by his friends, and then by society. Thanks to Esmeralda for helping him to see his own worth. But if you still think Quasimodo deserves love in the romantic sense, there is the direct-to-video sequel by Disney, The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, where Quasimodo meets a circus performer named Madeline, who also has been gaslighted by someone, and thinking that she is not worth much, that there's only one way of life for her. And yes, the animation and writing in the sequel are not the best, I will admit, and it's not as good as the first movie, but I can't bring myself to hate it like everybody else because, damn it, Quasimodo and Madeline are adorable. You can't change my mind about them. So, to sum it up, people should not be judged for their appearances, but their virtues and vices. Those who hate others but claim to love God are hypocrites. Lust does not equal love, and Disney does their endings better. I'm sorry, they do. What are we supposed to learn from everyone dying? In the hateful time we live in now, especially, we need hope. That people who are different will find their place in the world, and when they do, when they are treated equally to everybody else, that is true justice. Happy Pride Month and happy belated Juneteenth. Alright, before I announce our last episode, is there anything that anybody in the chat wants to add? And BellaPinkSavage says, just damn, what a story. I know, what a story. It's definitely one of Disney's best, and definitely Disney's darkest and deepest. And you know, I think it gets overlooked sometimes, unfortunately. Yep, Bella agrees. So, for our very last episode, we will end with 2 film adaptations of Beauty and the Beast, French ones, from directors Jean Cocteau and Christopher Gans, 1946 and 2014 respectively. Feels appropriate to finish with direct adaptations of the original fairy tale. And patrons, if you want to continue your patronship next month, then go to patreon.com/DisneyFanatic2364. It would help if you cancel your membership for this month, though I will be closing the patron program at the end of June 30th. You've all been very supportive, and I hope that support will continue. Thank you for listening. Au revoir.